morning, everyone. This is another episode of the Weighted Native Chronicles, and I'd like to do something a little bit different this time. I've got some reloading to do here. I'm going to be seating some bullets in 44 mag cases. I've got the cases all charged, and as I was doing this, maybe like a lot of you, given the recent news events, and this is in August of 2019, this video is taken. We've had another spate of mass shootings in the States. It can happen in other places too, but it seems to be pretty more common in the States, and there is a lot of controversy about it. Up here in Canada, we're also affected by the changes in public opinion when it comes to guns and how they should be controlled. And the laws in Canada are quite different from in the States, so we're dealing with quite a different kettle of fish here. In the States, the situation is very different for one main reason, the way I see it. They have in the Constitution guarantees of the right to bear arms, and in Canada this is kind of missing. There's nothing really explicitly said in our Constitution regarding that. So when it comes to the ongoing battle between people opposed to guns and those in favor of guns, the case is harder to sustain here in Canada, so we have to be a little more careful and a little maybe less in your face, because we do depend to a greater degree on the goodwill of the public and a good perception of us as gun owners. And I have to say that I think the good perception in the past has been really built on a non-threatening, non-scary type of view towards guns as being used for hunting, not all that far away from frontier days when people would be living in the wilds and making their way on their own, mostly on their own, and using guns to harvest game, to feed themselves and also to protect themselves. So the use of guns was, pretty normal type of thing. But as society has progressed, we get larger urban centers. Fathers maybe aren't passing down skills of hunting to their children so much anymore. So the interest and the skills and knowledge regarding proper and safe gun use and everything that's involved in hunting, which is really a lot to learn, is getting a bit lost. It's become more urbanized. Yet out in the rural areas, it's pretty much as it's always been. So we get quite a divide, I think, building in society between mostly urbanized citizens and those not in the urban centers. And as things go on, the urban centers, the population grows at a faster rate, and the political power of those centers increases faster too. So this really puts gun ownership at a disadvantage and for being misunderstood, and it's really hard to get through to people who have no background in guns how they should view firearms. They've been maybe fed a lot of different stories there. Every incident is blown up on the media. I mean, we have a huge number of deaths caused by a large number of causes besides guns. But with the media the way it is now, it's not like it used to be. They live on clickbait. They have to have views, and they're trying to earn money. And violence with guns sells. It's kind of the same reason movies with guns shooting sell too. It's really all the same thing. This is what piques people's interest and gets people going. So it's I I guess it's kind of fun on the movie end that we have all these westerns and things like that with fancy gun use, and it makes for excitement. But then on the other end of it, we get the news media, and every little tiny incident and large incident that occurs with gun deaths is really put under a microscope, and the fans of the flames of fear and hatred are fanned, so that until people get into a real state about it, even though in reality the actual chances of getting killed by a firearm here in Canada at least is, it's probably like less than getting struck by lightning. But nevertheless, it is what it is, and here we are in this changing culture. It's really hard to push back against it as your base of knowledgeable gun owners becomes smaller and smaller. But there has been one thing that has been moving it in another direction, and that is, oddly enough, I would have to say video games. I work at a gun counter, and so I deal with customers, and this is in Canada again, but it's much like in the States, I'm sure. I deal with a lot of customers, and I can see a shift in the demographics, I guess you would call it, of gun owners, and the real growth in this sport of shooting has been coming from, as always it should, from the young people as they're getting older. And young people nowadays are starting out, their first exposure isn't dad showing them how to hunt squirrels or stuff like that, or go and hunt gophers, and moving them up ranks and developing their shooting skills in a very practical manner, this caliber for that type of use, and this is how you conduct yourself, and looking for ethical shots, all these good teachings that are best passed on by a parent to child, and I should say to daughters as well. It's really growing with women as well, shooting. But now instead of that, we're getting kids more isolated in their basements, playing video games. Parents probably don't care one way or another about guns. They're not really interested in it, and kids are developing their interest in guns on their own, and within the context of video games, which unfortunately, well, they're violent, but it's all part of the adventure of things, I guess. And when I see people coming up the ranks, come into a gun counter to buy guns, I can really see that influence. And the gun ownership rights groups in Canada, from one of the presidents I spoke to, I kind of questioned how good an idea it is for so much of our shooting public to be coming up in that way instead of hunting. He's just basically saying, look, that's where the political strength is, and he does have a point. You have to have numbers, like everything. If hardly anybody in your group is represented politically, they ignore you and they'll run over you. It's your rights become subservient to the majority, and so you have to have those big numbers. And I can see there's an argument for shooting sports becoming more geared towards, let's call it the black gun style of shooting. People are taking these semi-automatic rifles, whether they're restricted or not, and they enjoy the whole idea of shooting at human silhouettes as if they're in a battle. I mean, as if they're just coming out of a video game, let's be honest. And they like to practice all these tactics, moving from barrier to barrier, and bang, 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 bang. It's a totally different world than hunting, totally different. And the types of guns that are required, totally different. So where does that put us? We're I can see on the one hand that the public is getting a little bit concerned. The last guy who did a mass shooting that I've heard of, he wanted to be a super soldier. So he's obviously being influenced by the drama of video games and movies and things like that. And I think maybe there is something to be said about, you know, if you're out there every day practicing to be in combat. It's not that everybody who does that is going over the deep end, but yeah, from the public's point of view, why be surprised when somebody decides to actually do that in real life? So what do we do about that? In my opinion, I would wish we could move back towards a culture that was put guns in the hands of hunters mainly. I know there's all kinds of arguments against that. People say after you let them take the AR-15s and guns like that, the next thing they're going to do is they're going to come for your hunting rifle, because that's a military rifle too. You know, I'm not too persuaded by that stuff. I mean, there is definitely, I think, a pretty clear line that can be drawn. You know, what kind of purposes guns are designed for. And people say, well, an AR-15, it's also good for hunting. Yeah, okay. I don't think so. But people demand to have their freedom to do these things, and unfortunately we kind of all sink together, and people say that's why gun owners have to stick together. Well, we have to all stick together, not let anybody go after the AR-15s and things like that. But yeah, we all sink together too, let's remember that. Okay, so if the public gets so weirded out by all these shootings here in Canada, we're just, in my opinion, we're one mass shooting away from losing a whole ton of gun rights. We wind up like New Zealand. It's very easily possible, depending on how horrific the incident is. We're just living on a knife's edge here, teeter-tottering on whether we're going to keep gun rights or not. So, I'm not going to tell anybody what to do. I'm just giving my thoughts on the subject. I mean, there is, Canada is very different than the States. We have to register all our guns. I think we sort of have this situation under control pretty good here, except for these crazy places like Toronto and stuff, and gang warfare and all that. I mean, what on earth can we do about this? I'm sitting here in Western Canada. I do live in a big city, but there's not people being shot all the time and stuff like that, like in Toronto. Why should I have to pay the price for what these idiots are doing in these ghettos in Toronto with their drug wars and gang wars and stuff like that? That is not on me. Those are crimes not committed by people legally owning guns anyways. So I mean, there is a whole area that has to be dealt with in terms of stopping the access to illegal guns and things like that. I mean, that is going to have to be one of the focuses. But you know, aside from that, you've got to give people a chance. We don't want to broad brush everyone for the sins of a few. It's just like, you know, we're always told, let's not paint all Muslims with a broad brush because there's a few nutcases engaged in terrorism and things like that. This is all true. It's very fair. And then the same has to apply with gun owners. We're really trying to do our best. And here in Canada, you know, we're basically the most vetted group of people in the country. I'm not sure if everybody's aware of it, but in Canada, our records are checked every day. When you're what they call a possession and acquisition license holder. That means everyone in Canada, in order to buy a gun or even to buy ammunition, has to be in possession of that license. And that means you've gone through a process, you've been vetted by the RCMP, and it's shown to be a stable person. There's no kind of violence in your background. Your wife is okay with you having a gun, like you haven't been just going through a breakup or a divorce that's with a lot of conflict in it, things like that. So you get that license if you're clean. And not only that, but you have to continue to be clean. So, as I said before, I work behind a gun counter. And when somebody comes to buy a gun, and this is probably the case in the States too, in some of the states, but in Canada, it's Canada-wide. Somebody comes to a gun counter, they want to buy a gun, they have to hand me their PAL, that's the possession and acquisition license. And then I take that PAL, I have a business account on the RCMP site, and I go in there and I put in their PAL number and click, and it comes up and tells me if the person is valid or not. Now, we're sort of like the last stop to prevent violence in a way of thinking. Because let's say if a person was a gun owner and he got into a really bad divorce or breakup with his wife and kids, this is really where a lot of stuff happens. And the guy starts making threats, and wife calls into the police, you know, my husband is threatening me, and even if he doesn't say he's going to get a gun, you know, if he's just threatening her, right away that person, his record is updated in the PAL system. And so if he comes to the gun shop I work at the next day, says, I want to buy a gun, he's not going to get one. It's going to show up right away. So every gun owner in Canada is run through this system daily, constantly updating. We're making this system as safe as you can possibly do it. So, yeah, we're doing the best we can, we think. The one area in Canada where we go, I really think, way overboard is with handguns. I've had so many clients come to the counter and wishing that they could carry a handgun in the bush for protection. Myself, as you might know, my favorite gun is 44 Magnum. I did actually manage to get a permit for carrying one in the bush when working on a trap line, but that's a very rare instance that you can do that stuff in Canada. For the average person, they can't carry a handgun in the bush, and it's, in my opinion, it's really so silly. If you're a fisherman and you're going in bear country, especially grizzly bear country, what are you going to do to protect yourself? You've got a lot of gear to carry around. The reason they let trappers carry a handgun is because they do have to carry a lot of stuff, and it's just practical to have a handgun. The handgun can be for the purpose of dispatching animals that are trapped, or it can also be a handgun for the purposes of protection against the wildlife. And so the Canadian government has made a sensible stand in the case of people who have an occupation in the bush or in the wilderness. If you're working in the wilderness and you have a reasonable fear of danger from wild animals, you pass all the tests that are required, and you can take a handgun in the bush with you and use it if necessary. If you're a trapper and you need to dispatch animals, likewise, because you know, trapper's going to be dragging animals out of the bush, taking a lot of gear with them. Taking a rifle is really asking a lot, and a handgun, that's where it's really suited for. Handguns actually have a real purpose. So why doesn't the Canadian government acknowledge the simple fact that handguns do have a real purpose for, let's say, bow hunters? We have a lot of bow hunters nowadays going in elk country, and they're hunting elk and moose in country that's got a lot of grizzly bears, and the grizzlies become very aggressive, especially in the fall, when they want to take over that animal you just shot. It's a lot of danger. There's real danger. Black bears can present a danger. We have a lot of cougars here, mountain lions, and bow hunters, they can't carry a rifle with them as well as a bow. I mean, it's obvious. It's very sensible to take a handgun, and but the Canadian government doesn't allow that. Just silly. The other side of the coin, I guess you got to always look at these things from both sides. I'm sure the government and bureaucrats and people like that have to make these calls are saying, how if we open that floodgate, how are we going to control it? You know, 'cause they got this problem with all these people already shooting each other up in Toronto. How are we supposed to manage this? You know, once we make it okay for you guys, we have to make it okay for them. Well, I realize it's a difficult problem because once you allow citizens to carry handguns in the bush for personal protection in a non-occupational setting, yeah, you're going to get a lot more people. Actually, you're going to get a ton of people right away. I'm absolutely sure of it. They will flood the gates of the gun stores buying handguns, because that's exactly what hunters and fishermen and outdoors people want to have on them, is a handgun on their hip. And the growth in the shooting sport of shooting handguns is going to grow remarkably fast. I'm absolutely sure of it. I know this from talking to people. They just wish that a handgun could be used, could be made useful. Because people really like shooting handguns too. It's really it's a great sport, but you know, you can't use it for anything. You can only take the handgun to a shooting range, which kind of sucks, right? So for sure, if the government did legalize that, and they could impose all kinds of requirements on it, I think people would be fine about that. I mean, for the authorization to carry, in order to get that, you have to demonstrate some pretty good shooting skill. I mean, rapid fire, drawing from holster, you have to pass a test. This is already in place for the authorization to carry. You have to draw from your holster in a safe way, so we're really kind of going about it in the right way with that. It's stopping an animal with a handgun is not an easy thing, and I'm sure that's what a lot of people are saying right now, is they're useless anyways. But actually, a handgun can be very effective and very quick to get that thing out and working to protect you if you're doing it the right way and practicing lots. So don't write off the handgun that easily. You know, 44 Magnum is an awesome piece of equipment, especially when you got a couple of speed loaders and you've got a lot of practice under your belt. I feel pretty confident with the handgun as opposed to a rifle. The handgun, I'll get it out quick, and if the animal does get me down on the ground, which often happens, you can maybe get that handgun out too and get it into the animal and fire off a shot. There's a lot of arguments in favor of a handgun for protection. But you have to be trained, and I'm sure Canadians would have no problem at all with that. So, you know, how the mechanics of how to implement a change to the law in that respect, I'm sure would be quite difficult, because people would be up in arms saying, "Oh, there's people running around all over the place with handguns now." So, you know, we're going to have to give some thought to how to do this. But let's be honest, they're already doing it with trappers and you know, hunting guides. I think have these permits. Some photographers, some people working out in the bush, and that have valid reasons for needing protection. There are a lot of people out there already with an authorization to carry, so it's not like this can't be done. It's already being done, and it has been done for 50 years. So nothing impossible about it. It's just that there will be more people, and So that is one aspect of Canadian laws that I'm really not too happy about, and on the state side, maybe they're too lax. You know, I think people should have at least a bit of training with a handgun. It's not like carrying a rifle. But anyways, that's their deal and their calls to make. Totally different situation. But in case some of you watching this are interested in a Canadian perspective on gun control and things like that, that's sort of where we sit over here. We are a pretty free country. We have great hunting up here. Natives have really good rights for hunting. My wife is native, and we manage our wildlife well. Maybe too well sometimes, because we've had grizzlies protected for, I think, a little bit too long now. They're starting to become a bit of a problem. But I mean, really, we gotta realize we're very blessed here in Canada. That I can go an hour's drive from the city here, and I could be in really great moose hunting country, and there's just nothing that beats hunting moose. We come back with, well, we've raised our kids on moose meat. Really, honestly, it's how many people can say that they can actually feed their family on wild game. That's what we can do here in Canada, and yeah, you can get out into places where you're all alone. There's tons of crown land. You don't have to go on private land. You don't have to ask permissions, things like that. It's we have a lot of freedom here, so we should be thankful for that too, and know that we've got it good. But it doesn't mean we can't make it better. And I think both sides of the border, Canada and the U.S., we're very linked. I think we can learn from each other too, and maybe something in this video is being of assistance to someone watching. I'd be interested in hearing your comments. I hope I don't get into too much trouble for being a little bit of a, what they call a FUD, but I mean, just my opinions. And I think we all have to, as gun owners, be free to express our opinions and input our thoughts into this discussion, because this is going to be an ongoing issue. I mean, conservatives even are going to, I think, slowly move. We have to accommodate a little bit. We all have to live together. We have to respect people's fears and things like that, and try to you know, live together a little bit, instead of this culture of everyone calling each other, calling each other's motives down, and you know, it's a bad way to go. Just be respectful and try to get our points across. It's the only way to go, especially as our numbers may be declining. So let's hope there's no major mass murders or gun shootings again. That's kind of a vain hope. It's probably going to happen again. This is not going to end. There's something in society, not gun related, that has changed. There's a sickening in the heart of man that's wasn't present in the past, and it's. I mean, when I was young, you could. Well, I took my rifles as a teenager downtown on the bus, on the public bus transit system, to go to the WW arcade and show them something or whatever. You know, we walked around with guns. We went to high school with guns, gun racks in our trucks, stuff like that. Nobody was shooting each other. So, you know, we really do have to address a central, a much deeper problem in society if we're going to fix this. And if we turn our attention aside from that and get diverted from dealing with that, it's not going to help anyone. It's just going to be a distraction. So we should strive to improve society in the most important ways possible. You know, maybe have to put more focus on keeping fathers involved in the raising of their children, not making faith be something to be ashamed of, putting some meaning back into life instead of just thinking we're a bunch of meat machines that are developed from blind chance through evolution. There's really got to be a lot of rethinking done about these things, because it is, we're seeing teenage suicide rates going up and up and up. Maybe it's related to pot use too, you know. There's been some speculation about that, maybe even driving to gun violence and the things. We have to look at these issues and struggle with them and try to find a way to really save our society, because we're breaking down into identity politics and everyone at each other's throat, and it doesn't really look very good. So let's be of good faith and treat each other respectfully, and I hope to see you again for another episode on the Way to Native Chronicles. Please subscribe if you'd like to follow this channel some more, and I would be interested in hearing your comments if they're polite and respectful. I don't mind hearing other people's points of view. Maybe I am kind of a FUD, but hey, I'm doing the best I can with the light I've been given. So thank you again.